Credits. Hello, good evening. Welcome to All Gathered Up. As you know, it's the show that goes into detail of all the skills and techniques that come up on the Great British Sewing Bee each week. And we do that because we have more time. We've got a nice hour, maybe even a bit more. And as always, you know it, what I'm going to say next. And we're able to do it because we have Carol Alayne with us, Master Tailor Couturier. Good evening, Carol.
Hi, Stuart. And hello to everyone who's joining us live.
Isn't it exciting? We've talked about this for a few weeks because normally we record now. This is when we record, 8 o'clock from watching it last night. And we said, you know what? We've got the tech. Why don't we try it live? And then we'll be able to chat live with our viewers who each week they come in and tune in and watch us, don't they, Carol? And they comment. They're such valued viewers, aren't they?
Yes, we really like the community that we're building over these years. This is our third year now, and it's really lovely to have this kind of interaction from people all over the world, isn't it, Stuart?
Absolutely. And it's just, as people know who have watched my shows, we have a little look at the comments. We also present the show for those who want to watch on another time. But let's just go and have a quick look. We've got James ready from the Antipodes? Antipodes, New Zealand. It's wonderful. And then we've got Lisa, look, here from Texas, which is wonderful. We've got Margaret in London, just to name a few. Mini Curve in Derbyshire. It wants to rain. It's currently sunny here at the moment. And there's Tom as well. Tom, we see your comments. We see many of your comments. Hi from a very occasional cargo pocket maker. Oh, those cargo pockets were something, weren't they? And Lisa says, yes, it's Texas. Wish I was in a cooler than expected London. I'm currently in 38 degrees C, heat in Texas, and humidity making it feel like 42.
Sorry about that, Lisa. I'm sorry about that. Wish we could cool you off a bit.
But yes, it's the community that's been growing. We see you week in, week out commenting away, and you all appreciate the skill sort of chat that we have, and Carol going into more detail and the approach. We like to be open for any type of sewer here. Doesn't matter what stage you are at in your sewing career. You could be a beginner like me, or you could be someone way more advanced that has many years of experience under your belt. But as you always say, Carol, you can learn new things all the time, no matter how long you've been sewing.
I'm still learning. I'm still learning. And even the mentors that I worked with 35 years ago, when we get together and we talk about what new fabrics are out there, what new materials are out there, responding to warming temperatures, fabrics are getting lighter. So we have to understand how we can put the architecture into these new lightweight materials. There's always a new challenge, and there's always something new to learn. And we always talk about it.
And I know it's the teacher in me. I love to learn regardless. And I've no problems with making mistakes and saying I did this wrong or I did a boo-boo here, because ultimately that is how you get better, by doing it over and over and over again and not being put off.
Oh, someone's in the join button.
So what we want to do is to ask questions. And if you look at the chat, Mike, Carol's other half there, has said there right at the top, we've pinned it to the top of the comments. If you want a question, ask it. There is never a silly question at all. As I say, we're all at different levels here, and Carol will try her best to answer it. So if you have a question at any point during the show, just put a comment, but put a Q at the front of the comment. And the only reason why we say Q, obviously Q for question, is because I can search on my little comment thing here. I can just search for a Q, and that will just highlight those questions. Because at the moment, if I have to scroll through, it's very hard for me to pick up quickly what is perhaps a question. So as the show progresses, If you want a question about the topic, which is week 7, 90s week, then put a Q. And then when we finish our discussion on our show, like we always do, we have about half an hour looking at a specific skill that came up in the show. And then we look at the pattern challenge or whatever rounds. We talk about them, which you can join in with. Then we'll open it to open questions. If you've got a question about your current garment that you're making, or you've got a question about your pattern that you're about to start, but there's something that you're unsure of, then type it away, and we'll see how many we can get through up to 9, maybe a little bit over if it goes to 9:15, but we'll definitely finish for 9:15. Depends on you. If there are no questions, then we'll finish at 9 after our usual show. But please, if you've got anything, no matter what you think of it, people won't be judging. We're all at different levels, and we will do our best to answer them, won't we, Carol?
We do. We will. Ask away.
Absolutely. So just write it down and put Q at the beginning, and then I can sort through those, and then we can come to them at any point. But as always, let's go on to our show. And before we go into the 90s chat, have you noticed it, everyone?
It's done.
It's there.
Look at you.
Look at this linen. It's fabulous. And as always, in Woolpatch style, I've made a tiny little video. Here's a minute's worth of a video montage of my close-up version, so you can see it really well, of my tablecloth that now is, I have to say, my best make I have ever made. Have a look at this. Well, what did you think?
Bravo, Stuart.
Oh,
Wow.
Thank you.
That is such a beautiful make, and I love the way that you placed some of the more open lacy weaves and the motifs on the bicep and on the back. And I love the way that you put the string of the embroidered flowers focused on the collar.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Oh, yes, on the collar.
And on the collar, and the way that you featured the very lacy scallop on your cuff. It's just beautifully cut and placed. And not only that, but you know, the precision of your top stitching along the back of the yoke. Everything looks very crisp. And also, I love the sizing of it. I have to say, it's summery. There's some tolerance in it, so it kind of floats, and there's the beautiful movement in it. Wow.
Thank you, Carol.
what a great make. Really beautifully done.
Yeah, so pleased. You've seen, if you've watched our show here last year, I made two, and the year before I made a red gingham was first, then I made a blue gingham because the gingham was, you know, kind of a cheat because you can follow the lines because it was 1/4 inch gingham. But it was a fitted one. It's a beautiful pattern. If anyone knows of the company, I think they're a Canadian company, Thread Theory. It's a wonderful pattern. It's called the Fairfield shirt, button-up shirt. So if you want it, I'll at the end of this whole show, when we do chapters, I'll put all the links in the description. But it's a very fitted one. It's a modern fit. So the shape actually of the body comes in, and there's even got darts in the back, and then comes out. And I thought, you know, for this, I want the tablecloth to sing. I want the fact, like you said, I want to paint with this fabric and let the fabric do the talking. So I thought, I don't want it fitted, I don't want it shaped, and I certainly don't want to put darts in because it would ruin that back panel, wouldn't it? And it's now, as you rightly say, a floaty, perfect summer shirt. So thrilled. But viewers, I didn't do it in 4.5 hours, sadly. It took 3 or 4 weeks, but it's just nice to be inspired by the Sewing Bee. And I know at times we can moan about the program, which we do, or, well, not moan, that's the wrong term. We critically analyze it because it's our craft and we like to discuss it. As I've said many times, it's like Match of the Day when the pundits spend an hour chatting about the football match. Well, we like doing that with our sewing. So it's just... It's nice to be inspired by the program and actually get sewing during the Sewing Bee. So I feel very proud to be in it. And more importantly, I couldn't have made this without you, Carol. Over the 2 years and certainly over the last 3 weeks of texting you going, have I got my placket on the right way? And yes, I have got them. I have. Can you see it?
There you are, you see.
Yeah, there's my placket. All there.
That's it. I mean, those aren't easy things to install. We know that, and we always, and you know that you have to think in symmetry, don't you? You have to think in opposites.
Yes.
So this placket goes that way, and that placket goes the opposite way. So that sewing can be confusing like that. Can I just ask you one question? Is it easy to tell the right side of your tablecloth from the wrong side, or the top side from the underside?
This one was, because of the lace work and the embroidery work, the embroidery is raised on the right side and it's kind of hollowed out on the wrong side, if that's clear.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's clear. All right. So
I could
and
see
you
it.
have to, when you're going around with your pattern pieces, you have 2 fronts, you have a back,
yeah,
you have 2 sleeves,
yeah,
you have a yoke, you have a collar, you have an undercollar, you have a yoke lining, you have your plackets. There's a lot of pieces, aren't they?
Oh,
and
absolutely.
you have to work out how you want to. You said you wanted to feature your tablecloth. You wanted to feature the motifs and the special embroidery. So you have to work this all out ahead of time.
Yeah.
And if you're going to cut, I think if they give you one front, maybe it's a good idea to make a second front, so that you know that way you have 2 pieces and you're going to cut a pair.
Absolutely.
It's a good idea to have 2 sleeves. Same thing.
And that's one tip, viewers. And I know it means cutting more, but I've learned so much from that, because this pattern, I was supposed to just put my sleeve down and it says cut 2. And it's like, well, actually, you're not really cutting 2 of the same pattern, are you? Because technically, you've got to turn it the other way round and cut another one. So I've just drawn now a separate sleeve. So I'll cut out that sleeve that way, and then the other sleeve, it's already cut out the right way round. It makes it so much easier, doesn't it?
It does. So you're cutting a pair.
Yes.
Instead of cutting 2, you're cutting a pair, and they have to fit together, and they have to really at the heart of sewing and not getting into trouble.
And that's one of the tips I've taken from our chat. So there you go, viewers. Think of it like that, in pairs rather than just cutting two. There we are. Enough talk about me. Now we've got to talk about you, Carol, because it was 90s week, wasn't it, everyone? I was at university. I remember it very well. But Carol, you've got some fond memories of the 90s, haven't you? Tell us about that. Let's have a nice discussion about that.
I do. Well, that was an amazing decade for me. I did a lot of work. I was on Savile Row. I got a lot of commissions. Word of mouth took over. And I invited the press in to talk to me about, about what I was doing. And I had a company then called the Concert Store. So I was focused on dressing musicians and soloists, people for the concert stage, mostly in classical music, but some in pop, some in rock, some in jazz. So it was across the board, but mainly it was dressing people for the concert stage.
Oh, wow.
Then I got involved in the Olympic Games. Really, it was about making specialist garments.
Yeah.
And the most famous garment of all was when I was invited to make a garment for Laurie Anderson for the Meltdown Festival on the South Bank. I made her a garment. I don't have a picture of it with me, but I probably should have. But after I dressed Laurie Anderson, I got a phone call the next morning from her partner, Lou Reed, the one and only Lou Reed from the Velvet Underground. And I got to make him a garment as well. So it was just this word of mouth, and it traveled fast. And I just found myself so busy.
Well,
I think it's 1990. Yep.
Viewers, take a look at this that I've got from Carol. This is the press pictures. I can see how busy you were. Look at that. And
yeah, so it was all across the board, really. As you can see, there's some.
Yeah, but this is what you were talking about. Look, on the front of classical music, couture for concerts. Mm-hmm. Fabulous.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I went to places like the Hollywood Bowl. I went all over Europe. The Albert Hall Proms, one summer season of the Albert Hall Proms, I dressed 8 soloists. Now, that's in a 2 or 3 month period, isn't it? So that was a lot of concerts to cope with. And it just bubbled. It was just such a vibrant decade for me. I was so grateful I got to meet so many people and get involved with so many virtuoso garments. It's fantastic.
And we know the decade. The colours still. There's echoes of the 80s into the 90s. Look at that. The fabric there, the colours there. But doesn't those photos, the staging of it, the style of it, it's so 90s as well. I can remember that type of photography on the front of Smash Hits, the music magazine I'd buy, and all those number one, all those magazines. You look like a pop star in those photos. How wonderful!
Yeah, and I didn't realize what was going on then, but agents were calling me up to help with how their artists their artists wanted to be perceived. This wasn't about reputation, where how you make your first impression or the relationships you have with people or how you communicate. This was far more intentional. This was about how you want to appear on stage. And they were asking me to help with the branding of their clients. And this was something that was brand new, because before then it was protocol. There were certain things you wore on stage. And suddenly people wanted to reflect their personality on stage. And I think we have a couple of images.
Yeah.
One fascinating person that I got to work with was Nigel Kennedy. And instead of, look at this, picture the penguin suit, right? The tails, the white wing collar shirt, the bow tie, the cummerbund, the cufflinks. You don't see any of that here, do you?
Yeah.
It's gone. Yeah, so this is how one of the top classical musicians in the world.
Yeah.
And he wanted to break protocol. He and his agent had this, this feeling that this is the way they wanted to go. And in a way, it did make it more accessible. He's wearing a football jersey. So
absolutely.
Suddenly,
you think of the youth of me. I remember him growing up. Suddenly, it became, oh, right. it's not, and I learned the clarinet and the piano, so I knew all about that classical music world, and it did come across as as a higher stuffy sounds bad, but it sometimes had, I felt it was almost from my mates, it was almost a different set of mates, and I had to behave in a certain way, whereas seeing him do this, it suddenly made it, oh, this is more normal. Is not a horrible word to use, but do you understand what I'm saying there?
I do
Yeah.
completely, because if you would go back to the, the 1800s, opera was performed in what was, could be called a pub now. There's so many different
Yeah, and then it
ways to
went
behave.
highbrow, and yeah, I get you.
In concert hall and the concert experience, but he helped us to relax, and he
Yeah,
helped us to respond the way we wanted to, um, and he brought in a whole new audience.
absolutely. And then I've got another photo here as well. Tell us about this. This is Tina Turner. Look at this, everyone.
Well, we're talking about corsetry. That we know. This is what we're going to be about today. And I thought this was an interesting one because we're talking about stage performers. But if we look at this photograph, we are looking at probably one of the most energetic and athletic performers of all time. And she got around the stage and she never stopped. She never stopped moving. So I wanted to show this picture and have people start to think about how you make a corseted garment for a performer who's going to be jumping all over the place. And what are those challenges? So later on, when we start talking about technique and we get to the machine and we go to the mannequin, I want you to think about those challenges. Okay. And not making a corset for a static experience, but how do you cope with this?
And obviously 90s fashion, we know, and you will have known, it's that body conscious look, or bodycon as they call it. It's the supermodel. It's Naomi Campbell. It's Claudia Schiffer, Kate Moss. It was almost the rise of knowing famous people on the runway, which I don't think we really knew before. These stars, and their amazing outfits. But there is one person I know you want to talk about in particular, and that's Princess Diana, isn't it?
Yes, and then just moving on with the idea of the corset and how you integrate that into a garment. Yeah. And also we're talking about maybe the breaking of protocol, aren't we? And the establishing of brands, and how people started to use garments to describe how they wanted to appear in public. And this is a very important dress that I want to feature. Because when you look at this photograph, you're looking at a dress in 1991. But in fact, this dress is 3 years old.
Oh, right.
In 1991. It was designed by Christina Stambolian, and it was in Princess Diana's wardrobe, and she never wore it because she thought it was too daring and it wasn't appropriate. And then something happened, and she decided it was time to bring that out of the other wardrobe, put it on, and make her statement. And it's a very interesting dress because there is an internal corset inside. But if we look at it, we're looking at the dress, but we're also looking at a very, a large piece of jewelry on her neck, which brings the eye away from the dress. Yeah. And we look at her. We look at her, her hair, her beautiful makeup, her impeccable smile, and we look at that gem in the middle of those rows and rows of pearls. But if we take our eye off that and go down to the dress, we can see that it looks, on the one hand, pretty revealing, but then on the other hand, not revealing much.
I completely agree, and that's the art of the whole bodycon, isn't it? It's showing the body off, but not showing everything off. Quite
right. So we have an asymmetrical hemline, which starts above the knee and goes up to mid-thigh, right? Yeah. And then we have that piece of chiffon that is kind of an overskirt, almost mimicking a tailcoat. Yeah. And that takes flight. So the overall length is near the ankle.
Yeah.
but it's not, is it?
Yeah, clever.
And then we have a very exposed upper bodice, but really not showing much, and there is a sleeve on it. So this is a very interesting dress because it does confuse the eye. It's appropriate, but it's breaking protocol, and it's just that bit too daring. And I think this is a just magic of a design, and just so effective. And this is what the 90s were about.
Oh, wow.
And this is starting off. This is 1991, and this, I think, kicks off. If Princess Diana could do this, anybody could do this, right?
Oh,
because we
brilliant.
took our fashion tips from her.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I remember, well, we saw it with Mia wearing one of the knitted jumpers of I'm a Luxury, only a few can afford. That was a Lady Di jumper, wasn't it? And I know many of my customers like knitting the sheep jumper that she wears, the red jumper with white sheep and then the one black sheep. Oh, absolutely.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, wonderful. So many things there, like the idea of breaking from protocol with Nigel Kennedy and Lady Di there, and how that's reflected in the garments of the supermodels. Well, let's go into it in even more detail then. As you say, that corsetry, which we'll be looking at, and where are we going to start then? With you sewing machine or where? Let us know.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's go over to the sewing machine. I'm going to show you some fabrics. I'm going to show you a very intricate set of pattern pieces. What makes up a corset? How do you make, let's say, we're going to watch Asma make a bra at the top of a dress, aren't we? So let's talk about what these component parts are. Let's look at the fabric. Let's look at the architecture. Let's go over to
Speaking of architecture, that's just reminded me of Madonna and her cone boobs of Gautier.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yes, we'll talk about that too. And let's see if I can figure out how I can show how that's made. Can everybody see this? Should I turn it around, Stuart? Or are we happy
sure
to
can.
look at
Looks
this?
good. It might pixelate viewers just because of technology, but it's
I'm
it's
just wondering,
pretty much
maybe
there.
we should do this. Yeah. Okay, maybe we should do it like this.
Only if it works for you, Carol. I know that looks good for us because it's the right way for us. But if that works for you,
it does. But only I have to do this, and I know it's going to pixelate. I'm sorry, everybody at home.
That's all right. Just don't make it too difficult for yourself being mirrored.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, I can work upside down. I wanted to show you this from the center front, which is where my hand is.
Okay.
I'm moving over to the side here.
Yep.
These two go together. And when these are all sewn together, you have curved sections going into straight sections. And you'll know this, Stuart. You know how you ease something on one shape onto another shape, and you get a third shape, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So I've actually sewn this together, and this is what it looks like. Okay.
So they're your pattern pieces on the fabric, and then you've sewn the fabric together. Wow.
Correct. So here's my center front here. So this is half of a corset. This is half of the front. Okay? And I just wanted to show you what happens, how you're building up sculpture by easing different arcs together. And I'm using a product here called Couturier. Can we see that?
Couturier,
C-O-U.
Yeah. T-I-L. Yeah, got it. Oh, I can see it. White.
Okay.
White, black,
You can
flesh.
buy it in. Yep. You can buy it in those three colors.
Yeah.
And it's. Can you see the herringbone pattern in the weave?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. This is a very sturdy cotton weave. It doesn't move. It doesn't stretch from the cross or the straight of grain. And it's very hardy. And this forms the basis of a corset.
Okay.
Okay? Now I want to talk to you about how we treat the seams so that they stand tall. Now, I'm sure the viewers know all about different kinds of boning. The most common is probably what's called Ridgeline. And I'm sure people can recognize this.
Absolutely.
This has the added advantage. Yep.
Vicky was using that for sure.
Right, that's correct, she was. This has a small mesh on either side that you can sew in, okay? And Ridgeline just bends one way, back to front.
It's almost, okay? I know this sounds crude saying it, you know the plastic stuff that wraps around boxes sometimes? It's like that. It just moves in one direction.
Exactly. 100%. There's other boning which is plastic that you can sew through this, but you need a very sharp and a very heavy needle.
Okay.
And again, it only bends one way. The boning I like to use is spiral boning.
Spiral?
This is very interesting because it will bend side to side. Can you see this?
So you're going left to right, yeah, and...
Left to right and front to back. Okay?
Oh, wow.
Why is this easy to work with? Because if we go back to our... You can see how I can bend this almost into an S shape.
Oh, that's lovely. The camera's just lovely and cleared now, so that's perfect timing.
Okay. So the body is a set of curves. It isn't straight. So if you want to build some nuance into the shape of your corset, you want to get a hold of some of this spiral boning. Here's a quarter of an inch. Here's an eighth of an inch. So if you want just a subtle bit of shaping, you can use this narrower one. And you can get, now you see that there's a set of end caps. You can buy them pre-made.
Okay.
This is an 8-inch bone. And you can see that on either end you have an end cap.
Yeah.
Now, these end caps can be removed and reapplied with a set of pliers. Let's say you wanted to cut this just a bit smaller.
Yeah.
Then you need this tool, this set of pliers, and you can just nip one of the spirals. And it cuts. Here we go. And it tends to fly around the room as well. There, you see that?
Yeah.
It's gone. So then I've shortened this pre-made spiral boning, and then I would get another end cap like this, and I would put it on this end.
Okay.
So that keeps the sharp points from
just hold there a jiffy. Just pop it down on the table, the white at the end towards us, and that's you've cut it. That's perfect. You've cut it.
Mm-hmm.
They're not all going to fall out now you've cut it, are they?
No, what you've done is you reduce the length of this.
Oh, wow.
And then and then you just get another end cap like you have on this end, which seals
I just
off
imagined all
the
those
sharp
chains.
edges.
I just imagined all those chains suddenly falling apart. Now you've cut the end off, but clearly not.
That's not going to happen. No, that's not going to happen. It's that unique construction where it all stays intact.
Oh, it's rendered now. That looks lovely.
So you might just... Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim off that that sharp point.
Yeah.
And then, as I said before, you get another end cap and put it on and seal that off.
And do you buy those end bits in a pot in the haberdashery?
Yes, you buy them in the haberdashery. You can get 4-inch, 6, 8, 10, 12-inch, all pre-made, and you can get them in sets of 10.
Yeah.
And then you can buy multiples of sets of 10. And generally, about 10 will do a corset.
Right,
but as you can see, this is an 8-inch. It's not quite long enough if I wanted to put this into this seam here. Now, speaking of that, I'm going to show you quickly how to set this up in a seam. Now, we all saw how Vicky did her seams, right?
She did, yeah.
Okay, now here's a seam. And I hope you can see that I've sewn this at 1/2 inch. And then I've sewn it again 1/8 of an inch from the edge, which forms a channel.
Yeah.
And that's where your spiral boning fits into.
Oh, brilliant.
Okay.
So you're now going to slot that in.
I'm going to slot that in, and I'm just going to say a few words about the finished length that I want. Let's say this is a side seam, or if it's a side front seam, or a center back seam. You want to be careful that the boning isn't too tall for your seam. Okay, so make a trial and make sure that you can fold over the top and the bottom edge of your seam with ease, so that that piece of bone isn't overtaxing that channel. It's not poking out the top, it's not poking out of the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's just make sure that you try. Yep.
A question, Margaret, rightly so. I have this question sometimes, Margaret, in my shop. She says, what is flesh colour? I hate that term because it's almost guaranteed not to be my colour. I know exactly what you mean. I presume that fabric you've got there is what they call flesh colour, is it?
It's what they call flesh.
Yeah.
It's what the supplier calls flesh. Yes.
Yeah, it's an awkward term, Margaret, and I completely understand, because I sometimes get people coming into my shop wanting to make a doll, and they come in and they say, have you got any flesh coloured? And I will then say, well, and I'll develop that conversation and say, well, it depends on what type of person you're doing and what colour flesh you want. It's not that perceived that everyone is Caucasian. So yes, it's kind of a bit naughty of them in this day and age to call it that, but that's what some companies are like. But they are the 3 colours that you can get.
That's right. I know what you mean, Stuart, and I know what you mean, Margaret. I hear you, and that is the way it is. But it's really just saying we've chosen 3 neutral colours.
Yeah.
And you pick the one that's going to work the best for you. Now, generally, you would cover this with something else, so you wouldn't end up seeing this.
No.
This is
I get you.
really this is the basis of the corset. You would cover it with something else. Stuart, I'm going to turn this over.
Yeah.
So you can see the seams on the inside and how this all works together.
Oh, look at that.
And I just want to say another thing about just filling this in with a bit more structure and putting in a cup. Now, I'm not going to go into a great detail here, but I just want to show you, if this outer construction doesn't fit the body the way you want, there are other ways that you can help to fill this in and enhance the flesh inside. So I'm just going to show you different kinds of cups that you might put in. Now this one, for example, you might trim this. You look at where you think the bust point would be, and you match that up. And then you might trim this away. You might sew it through this seam here. There's a lot of ways that you can work with the pre-made cup and get a better shape against the body and a better shape in the structure. So again, I'm just going to go through these quickly. Here's a cup that has a little bit of a push-up in the bottom. Okay? So the flesh would actually fit on top of this, and that would push the flesh up. There's a lot of different things you can do with this. And then, if you wanted to install this, you could put another piece of binding on top of this, and that could be your channel. Or you could fit the boning in here if you had a bigger seam allowance. Or, because this is a bit too large, you could use 1/8 of an inch bone, and then you could top stitch it along the edge here. and that would fit in.
Okay. Whilst we're talking about this, Tom raises a question for us. If we could just drop this in. When you make a boning channel out of a seam allowance, how do you protect the raw edge from fraying, or do you always use a non-fraying fabric?
Good question. Very good. You just need to make sure that you have enough of a seam allowance to protect. You know how much it's going to fray. You see Couture frays.
Cool, blimey, look at that fray.
Okay, yep, that's fray. You can bind this, or you can sew a zigzag stitch on the outside.
Okay.
So it's really a question of knowing your fabric. But once this is installed, and you might put another top stitch along here to really sandwich it in, you're not going to get a lot of friction here to disturb that seam. But Tom, if you want to really protect it, you could make this an inch seam allowance and then sew your channel, and then you'd have another ½ inch here, and it would be free to fray away, and it's not going to really be that disturbed. So just protect the outside edge by knowing the fabric and how it's going to behave and how fragile it is, and then use that to make yourself a wider seam allowance on the end, or bind it, or zigzag it, or you can even hand overcast it, and you can make that quite a loose overcast just to hold the potential fraying in check. I hope that's helpful, Tom.
And just one more question, which I think many of us will kind of all understand. Kathy says, "Oh, glad you're looking at corsets. I'm keen for any top tips on keeping sewing so precise."
Well, you can of course prepare with marking, and you can also use your equipment. So precision is about making parallel lines, making straight lines. So you can use your presser foot. You can use the markings to the right of your presser foot that
Good point.
indicate.
Yeah,
I think we can see these here if I show this. So you can use either side of your presser foot. Here, my sole plate is in inches increments. So I have 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch, and I use these markings all the time to make sure that my seam allowance is always congruent, that lines are always straight. But if you look at this pattern piece, pretend this is your fabric and just mark it in with a chalk or an erasable pen, and then you can easily follow along that line until you practice enough where you can let your equipment take over. Because the feed dog will keep moving the fabric through. So practice, mark, use your equipment.
and I don't wish to sound patronising with this, but it's one thing I've learned with doing this garment. I have slowed down my sewing dramatically. I am trying to really enjoy the sewing. So I pootle now. I go so slow, and I'm actually enjoying it more because I've got enough time as well. I'm just going to do this part tonight, and I'm going to enjoy it rather than, because we all want to rush sometimes. Or right, I want to get that done. I want to get that done, and it's so easy to. So it's simple as slowing down. Would be my tip, but I don't want to sound, really patronising with that. But it makes a huge difference, doesn't it? Slowing down.
That's so important. And why rush? They have to rush on the sewing bee.
Of course.
We're not sure exactly how they have to rush on the sewing bee. It seems a bit unrealistic sometimes when we watch this show. But if you have the time, take the time, and you will speed up. Now, Stuart, I want to show you a little bit about fabric, because we talked about couture, which is very sturdy and immovable fabric. But I want to show you a few others. This is called Power Net.
Power? Sorry, I missed that.
And this expands, and it's called Power Net.
Net.
It's a net. It's a netting,
Oh, I see.
and it's a weave. Yeah, it's a weave. It's very strong. And in a minute, we're going to go over to the mannequin, and I'm going to show you another corset made out of this fabric. So, power net. You can see I'm stretching it, and it's coming right back. It's recovering.
Oh, wow.
So this is...
Just do that again.
Yep.
Just do that again, because
Okay.
the camera rendered and then it went pixelated again. Oh, and it's literally going back to itself in every way of...
And yes, now it will just recover. Can you see that? So if you want to make a corset which is figure huggy, but allows the body to move, let's say you're singing, or you're just being an athlete and whatever you're doing, and you want your corset to move, you might try to use power net. Now here's a very heavy gauge, and here's a lighter gauge of power net. So you see, this is almost like a nylon stocking.
I was about to say it's like a pair of tights.
Yes, exactly. But you can use this to make your bodycon garments. You can use this as a lining.
Like a pair of tights, you can't put your finger through that and put a hole in it, can you?
No. This is very robust. So now we've looked at couture.
Yeah.
And the fact that's so rigid, doesn't move. But there are other options. So I want to go over to the mannequin now, Stuart. This will be the last thing.
Okay.
And I want to show you a garment. It's a bustier.
All right.
And it's made out of power net.
With the wonders of tech, let's go. We've got an extra camera, viewers. We've got Mike, Carol's other half. Look at that! Look, and the tech's working. It's pure. It's not pixelating at all. Wonderful. Thank you, Internet Lord. Oh, Carol,
wonderful.
That's exquisite.
Isn't this beautiful? It's such a pretty thing. But you can see this is the power net here. See there? It's fitted at the bottom with some non-stretch grosgrain ribbon. Okay? So that's going to adhere to the waist or the top hip measurement, whatever you want. And you can see our spiral boning inside. Now, we've got it at the over the bust. We've got a piece of boning here. We've got something going on an angle, the side, front, and then we have one at the side seam, which is here, and they go all the way around the back. I'm not going to show you the back because this bustier is a bit small.
That's okay. But it's incredible because it looks so delicate, even with the boning in. It still looks so delicate. That's right, and it still moves just a bit. So the thing is, whatever you cover this with, like you said, it's not like a concrete tube. Yeah, and it's not going to collapse. It's going to stay tall. That's what the boning is for. It's so this doesn't collapse. Now you'll see a lot of performers will just wear this as it is. I could imagine that.
It's very, yeah. But this is an interesting garment because it kind of supports the bust line.
Yeah.
And then you're free to wear something over it. But this keeps the rib cage tight and the waist small. But I wanted to show you this because instead of using the couture, you're using a movable, breathable fabric.
Wow.
So it's a lot more comfortable. And so that's that. That's just another option of what you can do if you're interested in making corsets and you've got some different ideas. Here's some of the ways you can execute that.
Oh, it's brilliant. Oh, Carol, fabulous. And thank you, Mike, as well for that. The internet gods shined down on us there, and we got a really nice, crisp close-up view of that. It just looks so delicate as well. Really, wonderful. And that's with that power net, and you can buy that readily available from like when we went to the haberdasher in London.
Absolutely. We went to McCulloch and Wallace on
Yeah.
Poland Street here in central London, and they have an online service, and you can just go
Buy by the
online
meter?
and you can look at a selection of coutil and order it by the meter. They have a very, very good mail order service.
Oh, viewers, if you've used Power Net, that's right. I've learned something today. Put it in the comments. It's wonderful just chatting away with you. I've got an extra eye on the chat, and the chat is wonderful. They're sharing techniques. You know, we were talking about, Kathy said, any tips for sewing precise. The viewers are commenting away on how to do it. Mini Curve says you can use Scotch tape on anything, your machine and the fabric. Also, the machine makes a huge difference. Faf, I've got a Faf, I completely agree, has this integrated something technology, I forget what it's called. And then, so thanks, Minnie. And then Judy, rightly so. And you can slow the machine speed too, Stuart. Right. I'm going to have to look at...
Yep. That's a good point. We talked about just going slower. You know, if you're having some problems, just go slower.
Kirsten says, the point is eye-hand coordination, learning how to move the fabric. Absolutely. How to hold the fabric or as you're sewing, so many things. So, and I think I've become more precise with my sewing from having the bed, having the whole, if you can, your sewing level, like on your machine there, that's cut to your industrial. It's level. It's a huge difference, that audience.
Yeah, I've got all this room to work at one level. I had a question come in about the Power Net, and somebody has just asked. Yeah, somebody has just asked if this Power Net is soft against the skin. The answer is yes. It's very comfortable.
Brilliant!
It's very comfortable. So, Jude, just don't worry about that at all. But yes, when you're working with the free arm, which makes the machine higher, it's awkward because you're sewing uphill and downhill.
Absolutely.
Also, the old adage. Let the machine do the work.
Yeah.
Let the machine do the work for you. Another thing I would say is never pull the fabric from the back. Feed it in from the front.
Let the machine
because
do
you're
the
going to
work.
tug against the needle. If you force it from the back, and you're going to have a problem. You're going to bend your needle. It's going to come too close to the presser foot, and you're going to break your needle. So just let the machine do the work.
Lisa says, I've used PowerNet as swimsuit lining on a couple of new suits this summer.
Good idea. Very good idea, because it puts a bit of control into the suit as well.
Oh, we need pictures at some point, Lisa.
I would love to see that.
Kirsten says, I'm sewing bras, so I use PowerNet a lot. Good idea to combine it with spiral boning. Coutil, is that how we're saying it? Coutil?
Coutil, correct.
She says coutil. Oh, I say she. I'm presuming there. Coutil is too warm sometimes.
It is. It's a thick fabric, and it doesn't move. It is like wearing armor plating. But again, if you want comfort and flexibility, use the PowerNet and the spiral boning. If you want something that isn't going to move, you know, I've sewn for singers. One in particular, Jane Eaglin, a British singer, renowned all over the world. She's a fuller-figured girl, and she wanted a very heavy corset. She'll take a breath, and then she would, use that corset to push against. Then she can control the amount of breath that she held in and release it, and she had something pushing back on her. If you want that in a garment, well, then you need that structure, then use the coutil.
Do you know, this is, in a weird way, I can understand how this fits. At the gym, bear with me, everyone, I'm doing squats with a big weight on my shoulders, and I squat down. It's now getting so heavy where actually I wear a belt. And the belt is just twigged. The belt is my corset because it, as you were saying, I pull it tight and it gives me something to push against when I'm going down. And it keeps me all together, just like a corset would do.
Yes. We were talking about that athleticism on stage and what you need internally, what architecture you need
Yeah.
to be an athlete on stage or in the gym or wherever.
Lillian has a question. When you make a corset, do you use the same boning throughout, or can you use different boning for different parts?
I have done, Lillian. You're absolutely right. If you've done that, I'd like to hear more about it. But I have used different boning in different places.
Cool.
Let's say if you don't want something to S bend, so then the spiral boning is not going to have the structure, then you can use a plastic boning, or you can resort to Ridgeline. But I would always press it both ways and make it flat, because Ridgeline tends to have a curve about it, you see. So
Yes.
I would prepare this before I use that, because it imposes then a concave or a convex curve where you don't want it. So try to get it straighter
Get you.
before you apply it.
Oh, and look at this. Kathy says she literally ordered. Oh, I've done it again. Sorry. Literally ordered a bed for my machine about an hour ago after watching an earlier episode on Catch Up. Oh, it has revolutionised my sewing because I'm not battling with gravity pulling the fabric down and having to hold it up. Because when you're holding it up to get it level, you lose that hand. So for sure, it has made my sewing better. And Leah, before we move on, Leah says, for those interested, within the home sewing community, there is an international bra sewing bee happening soon. Wow. Well.
Oh, that'll be good. I'll watch that. I've not done a lot of lingerie because I mainly put that structure inside a corset. But I am interested, and I might just take a look at that.
Well, we've got to 9 o'clock, and we've been blown away by your questions and comments. If you're all right, we'll carry on for another 15 minutes, because now we go, as we usually do on our show, after we have our little demo and our focus chat, we then link it to the sewing bee itself, like we did last week. What did we do last week? It was the the made to measures and the transformation challenge, wasn't it? Well, we thought, it makes sense to link what we've just discussed to the made to measures. We won't talk about the pattern challenge unless you've got a question, Tom, about bellow pockets or the transformation challenge, because let's keep with the 90s theme and let's discuss the made to measures, and also celebrates those made to measures, because some of them, I think all of them were fabulous. So let's link what we've learned and what we've talked about today into the made to measures and have a discussion about them. So let's bring them up. So I'm going to change that. We'll go through alphabetically, shall we, everyone? It's always better that way. Let's go to Asma, and she's just done what you've been talking about.
Yeah, this is such a beautifully made garment. I love the way that she's used the leather to draw the dress down, because it's made of very lightweight fabric from the thigh up. So she's put that leather fishtail skirt on to give it that draw back down to the floor using gravity. The use of that overlay lace, where she's utilized the scallop in the bra on the top section and underneath the cups, and then that beautiful overlay that just fits over her base fabric.
Got a close up for you.
This is the high couture. Look at that. The top stitching, look at those concentric lines that she's used. And again, the use of the scallop lace on the top of the cup there, Stuart. She's got that. It's kind of a pointy scallop lace.
Yeah.
That's it.
Clever.
I wish I could have seen the back of this dress. She had those parallel, those buckles, and we didn't see them.
I knew you were going to say that because I went and did some hunting. So look at this, everyone, and look at this, Carol. We did see this, didn't we? So we
Yeah.
saw the design, and look at that back. The idea being inspired by the 90s, ideas of Liz Hurley and the safety pin, this the idea of lines and flesh showing through. Yet when they did the catwalk, she didn't do a twirl. Why didn't she do a twirl? So I went back
It's a
and
mystery.
rewatched today, and look what I found. Get your eyes ready. There, look.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
That's as
So
close.
she did manage to get those done. Okay.
I think so. You've got to hope so. When we were talking about it earlier, Ting said, well, perhaps there was something wrong with them and they didn't purposely show it. I'm keeping positive and thinking maybe it just, in the edit, didn't get time to put the back in because it was so tight. But you can see it there. But yes, it was a shame that they didn't show it, because she should have come down that catwalk and done a beautiful twirl, shouldn't she?
She could have. She could absolutely show the whole thing off. There was so much to look at. Don't you agree?
Oh, yeah. What did you think about the judges' comments on it maybe a tad too low? They would have liked to have seen it higher. What do you think about that whole section there?
No. I mean, how can you nitpick at it? You know, why
Yeah.
would you even bother?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I thought it was a bit silly.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go on to... Let's get rid of that. And then Asma. There's Lauren next. So this was... Oh, that's her drawing. That's... let's get the long shot. There we are. That's Lauren's. I like it. It's like a whisper, that fabric. It's...
Yeah, this... Yeah, beautifully done. It's when you have... when you're working with basically a column of fabric and you're French seaming it and you don't have a center back seam, so you can't shape it in the center back. And then you have a client that has a hollow back. The only way you can shape that then is to add a dart or to put in a center back seam. She was missing that. I disagreed with the judges. I don't think it was too tight on the bust or anywhere else. I thought that was... That's what a bias dress should do. Yeah, a bias dress should cling, and it did exactly that.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got a few stress marks, but I wouldn't call that too tight. I thought it was beautifully done. I love the short straps and the way that the cowl went almost up to the shoulder. That was beautifully done. But what didn't work was she didn't have a provision to shape the small of the back, and that's what she was called up on.
Right. And this is what I love now. The viewers joining in with the analysis of the bee's work. Leah says, and I'll move this up so we can see it. Regarding Lauren's made to measure, the model had a curve in her lower back. Lauren would have changed the garment design to fit it. It's not something she'd known ahead of time from measurements. That is true. Yes.
Yes, that's exactly what we've just been saying, Lee.
Yeah.
That she would have. You're right. We've had a change of design would have helped. She could have put in a few darts, or she could have shaped it in the center back, and that wouldn't have taken a huge amount of time. If she put the dress on inside out, she could have pinned it out, and then she would have had her guide to sew it and then turn it back right side out. It would have fit, you know, much closer to the figure.
Let's move on to Lizzie's, which is where I get upset because obviously she was one of my favourites.
We're sorry, Stuart.
And that's what I love about the bee. You get your favourites. You look forward to seeing them each week and seeing them develop. And gone. But anyway, this gold is... did you say liquid silk, liquid gold? Was that your terminology? That's what we know of 90s supermodels.
That's what I thought. You could just pour this fabric.
Yeah.
You could pour it onto the cutting table, and yeah, it just reacted. So look how it reacts with the light.
Yeah.
You know, it speaks so well. It's a beautiful color. It's really lovely on her model. But a couple of things did not go right for her, did it?
No.
The center front didn't quite close. There was a bit of a gap there.
On
I think
the
she had a little bit of a trouble with her French seams, and then the hem, which yes,
yeah,
you see there, it's not really meeting in the center front, is it?
yeah. Tell me about this fabric, Carol, if you can. It looks like, and I with my limited knowledge, it looks like the fabric. You know the fabric when it's kind of static and it sticks to your legs. Has the fabric? Is it doing that? Because it doesn't. It's not hanging and draping and flowing. It looks like it's
Yeah,
being sucked in like a vacuum. Is that happening, or is it
exactly.
me?
No, I think it's maybe a combination. I know she had to iron her. She had to press her French seams on either side, so the iron can create static.
Right.
You need to just put some lotion on the skin, or sometimes some hairspray works, just something on the body to just cut the static out of that, the friction between the fabric and the body. And you've got that electricity already in because it's happened with the iron and it started to stick. And some synthetic fabrics pick that up more than others. Or it could be that it's so thin that it's just falling over the flesh and it's just
Oh,
sticking.
I see.
I
Yeah,
don't really know, but it certainly does,
I
as you
get you.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tony, you're exactly right. One of the challenge is to measure at the time. Yes, this week there was much more fitting going on. Absolutely, this was what the made to measure round was made for, wasn't it? To fit it to your model. Absolutely. Let's move on to Mia. Let's take that out and let's go to Mia, who clearly was inspired by Liz Hurley. This is her own inspired version of it. Black Velvet. Is Black Velvet 90s supermodel? Does it give that glamour? Because you often associate velvet with being a rich operatic. I don't know, or is it royal? I don't know.
Yes, I feel that the velvet was wasted on this garment because normally you want something that's clingy, has a bit of
Yeah.
stretch to it. Asma had a stretch lace. We're going to see Tony's in a minute, and he had a stretch fabric. This velvet is very difficult to sew, and if you're under time constraints, the last thing you want to do is get involved with velvet. It's
Right.
so moody. It puckers. It's so difficult to seam it. And there's a lot going on here that just isn't working out. It's not fitting very well. The slit is very high. That looks like it's not been calculated very well. The hem looks chunky. It's just it's a lovely fabric. It's an opulent fabric, but not for this design. And I think right here we got the wrong choice of cloth.
Yeah. Yeah. And also I think, I don't know whether, did she say she spray painted her jewelry? Obviously she can't use gold, but it didn't look shiny enough. It was kind of a matte gold, wasn't it? But
It was
yes,
it yes, it was.
with
It was a
with
lot of work. And then
yeah,
she didn't use the amount of chain that she wanted to use. She couldn't. She ran out of time, and that's probably because she was fighting with the velvet the whole way through. So she didn't have enough time to add as much metallic as she intended in her design.
but the idea is all there, isn't it? Really, if, as always with the sewing bee, if you have more time, of course you're going to be good. Do you know, it made me laugh. Viewers, what do you think? Patrick, bless him, he does come out with some great things, great comments. There were two comments that he said today. One was over Asma's cargo pants. I don't know whether can I find a picture quickly? Bear with me. Let's see if I can do this on the as it were. It was what was it? Pattern challenge. Right.
Oh
Patrick
yes, the
said,
first the
yeah,
cargo pants. Yes,
on this
right.
one, He said, "Oh, the side seam is a bit bouncy." Right. I have no idea what a bouncy side seam is.
No,
Could you tell
it's
us?
nothing. It's nothing. It's nothing. A bouncy side seam is it? It's just a lack of the vocabulary.
Right.
There's a few puckers in it. Okay, so but it's really not that bad. That could be pressed out. So it's not a bouncy seam. It's got a few puckers, but they're not pleats. It's
Right.
just a little pucker. That could have to do with anything, her choice of thread, the size of her needle. Maybe she was pulling, because she could have been pulling at regular intervals through. You see how you can almost look at the even spacing between those puckers that you circled.
Yeah.
So it could be the rhythm that she's sewing at.
Yeah.
Could be many things, but let's just forget about that word bouncy. It doesn't apply really.
All right. But do you think what do you think he was trying to tell us as a learner? What was he trying to if he had some criteria, what was he trying to say, that it is puckered, or the seam it goes up and down, up and down? Is that why he used that word?
I think so. I think it's really separating, the judging. So I think somebody asked earlier, what is the best fabric for the cargo pants? Well, that would be a thicker denim, the cami cloth that some people use. That's good because it is forgiving, and so you're not going to risk having those puckers show up. Asma's cloth was drapey; it was thinner. So again, I go back to the choice of needle.
Yeah.
Or how she fed the fabric through, or it could be many factors that led to that. But if you use a heavier cotton and the right needle, then it's whatever. If you make those same mistakes in the sewing, it's going to forgive, and they're not going to show up. And also, it has to do with pressing. It's hard to press a cargo pant when you've got a bellows pocket on the side seam. You have to press around it, don't you?
And if you're on a competition, one thing is probably going to be chucked out because of time. It's probably going to be the pressing, isn't it?
Exactly. You're going to make sure you get everything done and it hemmed, and then you've got to get that hook and bar on.
Yeah.
At the top of the fly.
Yeah.
And then, if you've got time, then you might press. But pressing in this competition is a luxury.
Yeah. But we all know, don't we, from our chats, pressing is vital, isn't it? All the way through. Mm-hmm. Vital for a finish.
It is.
Yeah.
And pressing along the way will almost give you a garment that doesn't need pressing at all when you're finished.
And just to finish off with another Patrick comment, he was analysing Lauren's work, and he went, "Oh, it feels like you just had to rush at the end." It's like, yep, that's because you've only given me 4.5 hours.
No kidding.
Sorry, Patrick. Sorry,
no
but
kidding.
It's like,
and it's beginning to look like this show is a bit losing touch with reality in a way, because you've got 37 pieces to make something, and
absolutely
25 pieces, and it's not possible. We know it's not possible. People who sew, not professionally even, but people who sew know you can't do this in 4 hours. So there's two things going on. You've got a competition, and then they're trying to hang on to this anticipation thing. But I think the audience knows better by now. Anyway, this was one of my favorite dresses. This one here.
Okay.
Tony's.
I did love it, and I just look at the fit there. Tig was having an interesting discussion about, remember the brief was a 90s inspired, 90s supermodel inspired. He was saying, and I can understand his argument, would it be more supermodel inspired if, like we were talking about Diana, more flesh being shown? Should it have been short sleeves?
Sleeveless?
Or actually no sleeves, or even shoulders out too? What do you think?
Well, possibly, but there's a nice slit. It's off the ankle. Yeah. The other thing that brought this away from the supermodel 90s was the crew neck for me.
Yeah.
You got a turtleneck. It's it's a sweatshirt, isn't it? But anyway, I loved it because he's got a fuller figure model. Yeah. And it's very body conscious, and it fit her very well. He had a bouncy fabric, which I think when the model raised her arm, it would raise the side seam, and then
yes.
that's a bit
I
of
think
ruching under the arm.
we've got a close up there, and they were saying
Yeah.
they kind of criticised it. Did they criticise it? The fit? I can't remember if they did. They said it was the fit, but that was because just her arms down, yeah?
Yes, I think so. And she's got a broad set of shoulders there. So the sleeve line looks correct, and I think that was a very minor point to call Tony up on, because it was a stretchy fabric, so it's going to ride up, in the wearing. But I think that was really nitpicking at that point. He really did a lovely job, and to control that diagonal line of two fabrics.
Tony, it's stunning. Let's just appreciate that, viewers. Look at that. And just going over the body there. I wish I got a close-up of that, because you could see his sewing on one shot and it was exquisite. Lois asks an interesting point about this one. What do you think about using scuba to make a supermodel dress? She says, perhaps I thought it wasn't quite in the spirit of the thing and it made the model look quite lumpy. Can scuba, is it in keeping?
I probably wouldn't make that my first choice for a couture fabric, but I think he made it work.
Absolutely.
And what I really like about this is, although the model is quite covered up, look how feminine she looks. Look at the placement of that line.
Yeah.
And where it lies across the bust line. That is intensely feminine. Look at the definition in the waist and the hip.
Yeah.
It's full of curves. And it's very effective. These kinds of garments don't have to be revealing. They don't have to be cut down to there and slashed up to there.
No, remember, it was that idea of it's inspired by a 90s supermodel. You can just be inspired by the colour. I'm just going to use black and gold or black and tan, or I'm just going to have a slit down the side. You're not assessed on. Well, if they say you need 5 criteria, then yes, he might be short of that. But
yes,
also,
inspired by leaves the brief open to interpretation and your own artistic license.
Absolutely.
And also, Tony is doing what he does best. Now, this is very wise. He's a smart technician. He's doing what he knows he can pull off.
Yeah, and actually, Lois, I think that's Tony being clever. Right, I'm in made to measure. I've got to make this fit very well. So let's choose a fabric where I can get this done quite quickly because of the little need for hemming or whatever. It's clever choice, isn't it?
Yes, smart choice. Absolutely, I completely agree.
And to finish, which makes nice way to finish with, is the one that we've been talking about all session. Look at that. There's
our corset. And look at the precision in that.
Yeah.
Look at that. She did such a beautiful job. Yeah. That's beautifully done. And doesn't it just suit her fuller figured model?
Oh.
That is really perfect on the figure.
Yeah.
Look at that. And you don't see the waistline. You see all this drama and all this clarity and decoration up on the bodice. And then the rest of it just falls gracefully to the floor. It's so beautifully done.
And didn't we see Vicky really step up? It was a great week for her. Maybe, if you were looking at, who you think is going to go this week based on what we've seen so far, well, maybe it would be Vicky, maybe it would be Mia. And some of that is just based on what we've seen. So you just go for a guess. Wow, she's now jumped way up there. Suddenly came out. I felt we got more of her in the edit too. I know you've only got 6 sewers left, but wasn't it wonderful to see? I was like, wow, right, well, she could be in the final now for sure, confidently.
She could be in the final now.
Yeah.
She really raised her game, and you can't go wrong with Power Red, can you? You can do something quite simple, and you do it in red, and she's really raised her game.
Yeah. Very much so. And just coming to the end, let's take Vicky off there. As Kathy makes a really good point, I'll put this down there so we can see. Thought the models were incredible. They are, absolutely. They do bring something to it when they walk down that catwalk, don't they? How they bring the garment to life and seeing it on them. They are, yeah, wonderful.
Well, a good model knows their garment and they can sell it.
Yes.
And if it's not worn by a model who really believes in it, then you're not going to get you're not going to get the effect you want. So the models, I agree, were incredible this season.
Well, we've got a show there, Carol, and viewers.
Indeed.
I've just gone and had a quick look through. I can't see any more questions, any specific questions. I think we've covered them all that I've gone. I've been just having a quick browse through. Hasn't it been nice chatting? And as I say, the technology's all worked. It's been lovely seeing what everyone's chatting about too. Thank you for taking the time to invest in watching us. Really, really value that time. It means a lot to us. And do you know what? It's just nice talking about sewing, isn't it, Carol? And talking about our craft, listening to people's opinions. Doesn't matter whether you agree or disagree, because that's the whole thing. You know, at school, you're taught to have discussions. You're taught to evaluate each other. You're taught to try and evaluate in a professional way, to keep it on topic. And I think that's what we do. And I hope you enjoy that type of analytical debate, I think you'd call it, wouldn't you, Carol?
I think so. I really enjoyed the interaction today because it helped us to move the dialogue, you know, here and there, you know, and that was nice to have that interaction. So, you know, thank you. And thank you to our moderator and the question and answer guy. Thanks, you, Mike.
Camera 2, extra camera. If you liked it, let us know in the comments. We could do more of them. It does add something to it. I know if you do it too much, it sometimes takes the novelty off. But maybe we could do the final. Maybe we could do the final live. We'll have a think. As always, we'll also have a little giveaway prize on the semi-final, so we can announce a winner on the final too. So perhaps we could do something like that. We like to treat the people who come in and watch and also comment.
Absolutely.
It's been lovely chatting to you. Hope you've got some sort of value from it. I know we do. It's just nice talking about it more, isn't it? Ready to put your feet up now, Carol? Yeah.
Indeed. Gonna pour a glass of something nice. The day is at end, but it's been fun. Thanks everybody for joining in.
Absolutely, and we look forward to hearing all your comments on next week's show, because we probably won't get much comment as we've been doing it live, but there are always people that watch on what we call it on catch up as the week goes by before next show. And I can't remember what the week was next week. I purposely closed my eyes because I didn't want to be spoiled, so I don't even know the theme either. But thank you very much for joining us and for tuning in. There's loads of people saying thank you and great show. It's really nice. We love doing it. So we'll see you as normal, recorded next week, and maybe we'll do another live soon. Thanks everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure and it's worked a treat. Hope you've enjoyed it. See you. Bye-bye.